Welcome to the show Vision India Forum. Amrit Mahotsav, Shri Mukesh Khetrapal, dear patron and friend of the forum over the last 1 year, celebrating Amrit Mahotsav together with people like him. He himself is an acclaimed trainer and speaker on military issues, leadership issues, brother of Paramvir Chakra, Sri Arun Khetrapal ji. The great Arun Khetrapal, 71 war, like most of his colleagues. Let me also add that Paramvir Chakra is just basically a stamp on the great bravery, valor of the Indian Army, which can be bestowed on a few individuals based on situational issues in a war front. Arun Khetrapal, in this case, was a hero whom the country and the Indian Army celebrated by bestowing upon him posthumously the Paramvir Chakra. 21-year-old Arun Khetrapal laid down his life in the Bangladesh Liberation War. Bangladesh owes a lot to people like Mr. Arun Khetrapal, and definitely when this recording will be over, the video shall be shared with the dispensation at Dhaka as well, so that they can take note of what happened and what was it like to be Arun Khetrapal, what was it like to be an Indian like Arun Khetrapal, who made the possibility of Bangladesh, a distinct nation, to be a reality in 1971 under the guidance of the political dispensation of India. Mukesh ji, over to you. Take us through the life and times of Arun Khetrapal, and also 71 war, your family's communication with him, learnings that the youngsters need to take forward, like we did with other martyrs that we are carrying on this exercise in this bi-monthly punctuated exercise in the Vision India at 75 series for martyrs and valor stories, because this is the bi-monthly period of the Kargil Vijay Divas. Over to you, Mukesh Khetrapal.
Thank you, Baikasab. And I must first start by complimenting you. Vision India Forum has brought to the fore key issues, personalities, and it is helping us to make a stronger India, a better India. Having said that, let me share with you what happened, to our family and how Arun, died in battle in 1971. Arun was my elder brother. I'm 1 year junior to him. So like you just said, Arun died at the age of 21. So these days, a lot of people, they finish school at the age of 16 or 17. Then they go to college for another 3-4 years. So basically, he chose to stand up for an action when he was very, very young. We were close. I was only 1 year younger to him. And there were just two of us. My father was an army officer. In fact, we are 4th generation connected with the armed forces. My great-grandfather, my grandfather, and of course my father have served with the armed forces for 4 generations. It was therefore inevitable that between the two of us, one son would join the armed forces. And it is a twist of fate, because actually my father was from the Corps of Engineers and he was a brigadier. So in those days, the parents used to decide the future profession of the children. In fact, it was I who was supposed to join the armed forces, and my brother was supposed to become the engineer, because those were the two lines of speciality that my father had with him. He was in the Corps of Engineers and an army officer. My brother was more intelligent than I was. And therefore, it was decided that engineering was a slightly more difficult profession and he would be able to I would. But although my father, from a fairly young age, had more or less pre-decided what our futures were going to be, but early in life, and if you've been part of an army family, my father, in preparation for his next days of his job, would have his vardi ready. And on occasion, if he had to go out in the evening, it was not unusual that we would wear my father's peak cap, his uniform, his soti. And of course, by the time he would come back in the evening, his entire uniform was a mess. And he exactly knew what had happened. We would, of course, pretend to be asleep. So right from those early days, when the armed forces uniform is of huge interest to a lot of children, as it was to us, we were very enamored by the armed forces. It was also not unusual that my grandfather, who used to live with us, at night when we would go to sleep, he would always tell us about a particular war story, because as part of his career, he actually fought in the African desert against the German army. And our bedtime stories, therefore, were nothing but about a particular story of how in the desert warfare they were surrounded by the German army and how my grandfather's platoon was able to survive and overcome that situation. And he would tell us that story again and again. Quite often we would go to sleep whilst he was telling the story. We were but about 6 or 7 years of age. Therefore, the army blood was imbibed in our family. Arun was a little bit more keen than I was in the, to join the armed forces, because on occasion, my father would go out to visit the troops early in the morning. My brother would get up on a cold winter morning to accompany him to go and visit the troops. I, of course, was more comfortable in sleeping under my thick razai. So just to say that although my father had pre-decided that Arun would become an engineer and I was joined the armed forces, in reality, it was the other way around. Arun was always more keen to join the armed forces than I was. Anyway, he did join. And what is the story behind that is also would be of interest for people to know. Because my father, after school, we went to Lawrence School, Sanar. It was a military kind of a school. Our school motto was something called "Never Give In." And I think that school motto also has got something to the character which my brother was able to showcase when he was put to test on that particular fateful day on the 16th of December 1971. But to go back to that story of how Arun became the army officer and I in turn became the engineer, it will be interesting for people to know. But my father had decided that since Arun was going to join the IIT, he was put to some training classes which he attended so that he could prepare himself for that very difficult examination.
Mukesh ji, just a small intervention. We will be talking to you also about various motivational issues regarding the next generation. I would request you to, try to, succinctly put across his journey towards army, into army, and then that communication during those periods. That is very important. And
Sure.
and then probably we can have a few question answers regarding the family issues, how to deal with
Right.
such things and all, and then we'll close the show. 10 to 15 minutes we have with us.
Yeah, I'm with you. No, I think this story has bearing because it shows his determination of how he decided to join the armed forces. Because when my brother appeared for the IIT exam, he actually qualified. He qualified for the IIT, and therefore my father and we were very happy that he actually got the a difficult exam like the IIT, and we were very pleased. But as a fallback, my brother was also asked to give the NDA exam. And that exam result came out 10 days later. So now my brother was very sure that he did not want to go to the IIT and wanted to join the NDA. And hence, he did not have the courage to directly tell his father, I don't want to join the IIT. So he actually told his mother, my mother, that Papa se baat karo, because I don't want to join the IIT. So my mother first tried to explain to him, IIT was a damn good profession and that he should go there. But he was not listened to her and he kind of pleaded with her. And so on the dining table one day, my mother took it upon herself to tell my father that Madan, which is my father's first name, Arun does not want to join IIT. So at that point in time, my father looked around at Arun and he says, ye kya pagalpan hai? What are you saying? Very few people get the opportunity to join an institute like the IIT, and you're saying you don't want to join? Ravish, you don't know what you're saying. So my father brushed it aside. Then every evening on the dining table for the next 3-4, there was complete silence because my brother wasn't very happy with the decision that her father had taken. Finally, one fine day when my father realized that no, Arun was quite sure that he wanted to join the armed forces, my father turned around and told my brother, "Acha beta, jo aap theek samjho kar lo." And of course, Arun was very clear what was theek for him, and he happily decided that NDA was the profession that he was going to go to, and that's the institute he went to. It just kind of tells you, the strong feeling that he had from very early childhood that actually made him join the armed forces. And also, it also has a bearing on that particular fateful event that happened on the 16th of December. If you were to ask me that would Arun have done something different on that particular evening, I don't think so. Because it was destiny that was calling him. When he joined the Pune Horse, on the very first day that he joined the Pune Horse, there was another event that I want to relate to you. All young officers go through something called a dining-in ceremony. And on this particular dining-in ceremony, he joined the Pune Horse, which is perhaps one of the most decorated regiments of the Indian Army. And if you go to their mess, you find that it is surrounded with trophies and all kinds of, victory flags and various kinds of collections that they've had over their entire journey of another 175 years of its existence. Sitting in that mess, all young officers are asked to raise a toast. So one by one, every officer raises a toast. Several toasts were raised, and finally it was called upon Arun. Okay, Arun, now it's your turn to raise a toast. And guess what he said? In the mess, there was the bust of another PDC winner, Colonel Tarapur, who was the commanding officer of Pune Horse, who died in battle in 1965 and was awarded the Paramvir Chakra. So Arun raised a toast to the first Paramvir Chakra of Pune Horse, Colonel Tarapur. So of course, everyone clapped and they, did the toast. But when everything was, people thought was over, Arun said, no, but I want to raise a second toast. And guess what he said? He said, I'm raising this toast to the second Paramvir Chakra winner of Pune Horse, Second Lieutenant Arun Khetrapal. Can you imagine? I mean, this was, the war hadn't even started. 6 months before. Joined the regiment sometime in June. And yet, it just kind of, something tells me that he was very sure that he wanted to, occasion demanding, to do what and to serve his regiment and the country far before we could ever think of what happened on that particular day on 16th of December. Another instance which also tells you of Arun's determination to go to the battle, when he went to join the unit, his commanding officer, Colonel Hanuj Singh, later on General Hanuj Singh, Paramvir Chakra, turned around and told Arun that, Arun, you will not go to the forward area. So Arun asked him, why, sir? He said, because you haven't completed your YO's course, which is the young officer's course, and therefore you will support the unit from the back. Arun was heartbroken. He pleaded with Colonel Hanuj, no, sir, you can't deprive me. A war is a once-in-a-lifetime issue, and I have to be with everyone else on the front line. Colonel Hanuj would not listen to him. So he turned around and he went to the adjutant and he requested the adjutant, sir, please talk to Colonel Hanuj. I have to go to the war front. The adjutant, on seeing Arun's desire and disappointment of not being able to go to the front line, went and approached the subject to Colonel Hanuj, says, sir, wo naya ladka hai, Arun Khetrapal, he insists that he wants to go to the front area. Colonel Hanuj turned around and told Ajay Singh, Major Ajay Singh, later on General Ajay Singh, that Ajay, ye kaise ho sakta hai, usne YO's course to kara nahi hai. So Ajay Singh turned around and said, Colonel Hanuj, sir, एक यहाँ पे छोटा सा टेस्ट कर लेते हैं, अगर पास हो जाएगा तब तो आप अलाउ कर देंगे ना. So Colonel Hanuj said, हाँ, but टेस्ट मैं लूंगा. So Major Ajay, came around and told Arun that this is the condition. If you pass the test, you go to the forward area. Otherwise, sorry. And Colonel Hanuj will check you himself. Of course, everyone knows that Arun, went through that test. He passed it with flying colors. Colonel Hanuj had no option because he had promised that if he passes the test, then he will not hold him back. And that's what happened. Now, why am I telling you all this? Basically, it kind of tells us that right from early childhood, we're part of the family of descendants which are part of the armed forces. He went to a school called Lawrence School, Sana. One of the school was never given. It's kind of army school, or a lot of army type of public school, but a lot of army culture there. He went to the NDA. He became the squadron SUO, as I'm told, squadron under officer. He was leading that particular squadron, and that squadron, they used to have competition. I'm told that the squadron that year, amongst the 12 squadrons that were there, they won the best award for that semester. He joined the IMA. Again, he was squadron cadet captain. And then he joined this regiment called Punos. Right from the beginning, step by step, through his fate and destiny, but also Arun's willpower of what he wanted to do. And he was a young man, only 21 years of age. So that's how, was the journey, Arun's journey of going to the battlefield. Of course, we all know what happened on that fateful day. So I'm not too sure whether I should, enlarge on that. But it was because of this, the question that I asked earlier, given an opportunity, would Arun do anything different? I don't think so. He was in a particular situation, and it was his upbringing, our family, the school, the regiment that which he belonged to, and above all, of course, wanting to stand up for the country. He was very sure when he went to the war. I want to share another small instance with you. That because he was on the western side, western sector, Bangladesh was on the eastern sector. Pakistani army attacked us in the western sector so as to try and dilute the impact of what was happening in the eastern sector. They thought that if they can cut off part of, that road connecting Kashmir, they might have a bargaining point as far as Bangladesh is concerned. Now, Arun was quite sure when he was going to the war front that he would have dinner in Lahore. I don't know, when he was packing he came home for a few hours because his Vayos course in Ahmednagar got terminated early because of the war. He came to Delhi for 4 hours, and then my father went to leave him to the railway station because he was going towards Jammu and Pathankot, where his regiment was stationed. And when he was packing his clothes, he packed something called a blue petrol. Now, blue petrol is actually an official decorative kind of uniform which is worn for formal mess parties. So my father asked him, Arun, ye kyun pack kar rahe ho? You're going to war. Why are you taking your blue petrol with you? And guess what he said? He said, nahi, jab hum jeetenge na, to Lahore mein party hogi, to blue petrol to pehenna padega na. I mean, that was the thought and spirit which he carried with him when he was going to war. Laughably, he also packed one more item with him to go to the war front. And guess what it was? His golf bag. So now my father said, Beta, iska kya karoge? He said, nahi, लाहौर में golf course है, वहां पे मैं golf खेलूंगा. He was a good golf player. So, I mean, he was very clear that he's going to the war front. There would be victory, and he was going to succeed. With that mindset, do you think when he was faced with heavy Pakistani armor, because he was in the armored corps, could he have stepped back? Actually, he was asked to step back. I'm sure you know. His tank was on fire, and his senior officer asked him to pull his tank back to douse out the fire which was burning on the tank. And Arun said, "No, sir. My gun is still firing. I will not move back 1 inch." See, Arun could have, at that point in time in that battle, he had done more than what was wanted of him. He could have stepped back. Actually, let me share with you. I, for a long time, was very angry with Arun. I mean, you had the opportunity. You've done more than your bit. You could have stepped back if you wanted to. I mean, didn't you know that your parents and the family, we were there? Or was it that it didn't matter? Let me share with you. See, on one side, I'm very, very proud of the fact of what my brother did. But even as I speak to you right now, and this happened more than 50 years ago, we're talking of 1971, this is 2022. There is still pain in my heart, not only my heart. This pain was carried by my parents to the graveyard. It is not easy, for a family to accept when a young member of that family dies in battle before his time. And we all grieve, even if somebody young were to die in a car accident or a road accident. So on one side, every martyr's family goes through this painful process. Every time I talk to you, I remind you, almost every single day, or let's say at least 3-4 times in a month, Arun's memory, we are confronted with him. Only, let's say, okay, let me just relate. 3 weeks ago, the commanding officer based in Delhi, along with 4 NCC cadets, came over and they said, "We want to meet you." And guess what? These people came to my house. They presented me with a lovely memento which was sent to us by Modi ji. I'm eternally grateful for Modi ji. Beautiful memento that he sent to us. Arun's name is inscribed there. He sent a senior commanding officer to my house. I was very pleased to meet the young cadets because they were inspired by Arun's story and therefore they had come along. On one side, I was very proud to talk to them and share Arun's life story with them. The other side, that hurt my heart. Surfaced again. Yet again, I want to relate to you at one more incident. There were 4 members in the tank along with Arun. 2 of them are still alive. And one of the members died on the spot with my brother, and his widow is still alive. All these 3 gentlemen belong to Rajasthan. Less than 10 days ago, the Maharaja of Jodhpur came to know of these 3 brave soldiers who were in the tank with Arun. There was a big function organized in Jodhpur fort. The Maharaja commemorated the brave deed done by these people. I was invited and I was very happy to go there. A very kind of the Maharaja after so many years to recognize. And can you imagine the pride of these people? One of these people, 2 of these people, they came from a village. They live in a small village near Jaisalmer. Entire busload of villagers came with him to Jodhpur to see how this brave heart was recognized before the entire public of over 1,000 people that were present there. Of course, they spent the last moments of their battle with my brother. And I am deeply obliged to them for being with my brother on those last few moments. But when I went to that function, again, I had a tear in my eye. We are many families like myself. Some of them are ordinary